I'm starting up the stream. Should be going soon. Looks like the stream's going. Hi everyone, I'm TigerHawk3, and today we are going to do more stuff with Tetris. Code is on GitHub and linked in the description below, and we're going to implement two things today, but shouldn't be too difficult or take too long because I've already done it offline and figured it out, and now I'm just gonna write it again and hopefully get it right. Those two things, as mentioned in the description, are hover and easy spin. Now hover is a feature where a piece will not immediately lock once it hits the bottom. The way this implementation currently works is basically you have however long the tick rate is when a piece hits the bottom to move it around before it sticks there and you get a new piece. But if the tick rate is very short, like if it's falling pretty fast, then it locks almost as soon as it hits the bottom and you can't slide it under things. So hover allows it to kind of hover along the bottom for a predetermined length of time, and it's good to have. Some versions of Tetris, the higher difficulty levels, just have each piece instantly go to the bottom and like snap there and not like fall really fast. They just appear at the bottom basically. So in those cases you would need hover to be able to actually do anything. So we are going to do hover, and there's also something called easy spin, also called infinite spin, where a piece stops falling briefly every time you rotate it. So if you just keep rotating it a lot, then it will not fall. And it's not amazingly useful since we have a pause feature in our game that doesn't wipe out the screen or anything. But it's a thing. It was introduced for a Tetris mode, I think in Tetris Worlds or something, where your score is based on the time. So if you delay too much by spinning a piece for a while to think about where to put it, then you will lose points anyway. So it's not a huge deal breaker. But we're going to do those because I want to. So for this, we're going to use something called properties, which we have seen before in the idle clicker. A property allows us to basically use getters and setters, except we don't have to keep saying my variable dot get and my variable dot set sort of thing, like get shape and set shape and get key and set key. Some languages, those are very popular for everything. So you would have a bunch of private variables, which is the actual information you want to store, and then you would have a bunch of getters and setters, which can actually be automatically generated by your IDE, depending on which one you use, and it just makes a whole bunch of methods that are like get shape is return shape, and set shape is shape equals, you know, x, whatever you passed in, you have a parameter. We have people in chat. Yushulu says thanks, and also Pistolero says let the coding begin. Yes, we're going to do that. So we're going to use properties, and the reason that I want to basically use getters and setters here is because I want side effects. Whenever we set a new value for certain attributes for a shape, I want to basically record the time. So we're going to need time, and instead of just row is going to be the name of our property. which is going to be what we'll use in our Tetris class, but the actual attribute of the shape that stores the row is going to be underscore row, which by convention means that it is an internal detail. So, and above this we need add property. And def, and then after this we will call this row. And this is the getter, basically, and it's going to return self._row. And now we need our row setter, and this is the method that's going to allow us to give a new value to the row. And we actually call it the same thing, but we have decorated it and saying this is the setter for this. Self and a new value. And if the new value is different from the old value, we will want to record the time. We will call it age changed. We'll need two of these, one for the hover and one for the spin. Row age, not age, row time 0, and spin time is 0. Let's actually call that hover, because it's going to be the hover feature and the spin feature. First, let's when we do this stuff, self.hover, this is if we want it on or off, is I'm going to have this default to on, because I think it's kind of important. So we'll call it no hover, not in sys.argv1 and onwards. So if no hover is in our command line arguments, then this will be false. So the default is on if you don't include anything. Self.spin equals spin in sys.argv, because this one I think can default to off. That's fine. So if we have, so we're basically saying if we set the row and it's different, then we want to say it's this is a new thing that's happening, and this allows us to check whether we have a piece that hasn't moved down in a while, meaning it's at the bottom. And if a piece has just moved, then we're basically going to clear a timer. But if it hasn't moved, then the time is going to count up, and once it reaches a certain age without this changing, then it's going to have to settle. And that's our hover time. Okay, if we have a new row, then we set it to the new value. And we do self.hover time. Actually, let's just call it hover. So pieces will have a hover, and the game itself will have a hover. And the game's spin and hover will say whether those features are on or off, and a piece's spin and hover will tell us whether it's still doing that, basically. Actually, should those be, this might be another property, I think it was, that I wanted to do. So, back we go. Here's our hover time. This should actually be time.perf counter, and that's a performance counter, and it's basically a clock. I can actually just put this here because they're going to be the same. Take that out. And the way assignment chaining works is this is evaluated, and then it is placed into here, and then it is placed into here, left to right. If you have the same object here, like if you have assignments to a list or something, then this matters, because you might change one part of a list and then change it again. Who knows? Anyway, hover time equals right now. Okay. And if it's the same as the current row, then we don't have to do anything. We don't have to reset it because that's already what it is. And another property of spin. And this will tell us whether we can, whether the piece is still in the process of spinning, I believe. No. We need to check if it's been rotated. We'll need something there. Let's do that right now. When we rotate, where is that? Where's rotate? Here we are. If it's a square, return. No, we want it to work for squares also. And do we always do this? Change the shape? I believe so. One way, the other way? Okay. So when we change, when we access the rotation index is something we will be changing. And when we set it to something, it means we have rotated it. I don't think it shows up anywhere else. Oh, for the preview piece. Yeah, that's okay. It's the active piece that I'm concerned with. Okay. So this means we have rotated the piece and updated it. So in here, before we return for a square, I'm just going to say it's still itself. And that will basically touch the piece and say it's rotated, because that's what's going to happen in our setter somewhere. We need a time. Has the row changed? Okay. Now we're going to have actually another property. Def hover. And this is going to basically report whether this piece is currently hovering. And how do we determine that? It's whether the current time, actually we want to, do we want to say whether it's not hovering? Hover will be whether it's hovering, and then if it's not hovering within the Tetris class, we'll say settle when it has to do that. So hover will be if return time dot perf counter minus the hover time is less than half a second. I'm gonna hard code that because I'm gonna. Yellowman in chat says and I'm getting video output low. That doesn't seem accurate because OBS is all happy. Maybe it was just when I was scrolling, but it should be okay, I hope. Anyway, I don't know why it's... YouTube is telling me that the stream isn't working very well, but I'm sending it and it seems to be working. So everything seems fine over here. I don't know. Anyway, so this is whether we are hovering. Whether the current time minus the recorded hover time is short enough, and then we can keep hovering. And spin is going to be return time.perf counter minus self.spin time less than also 0.5, I don't know. And we need to check when we update the rotation index, I believe, because that is only located. This is very worrisome. Yellowman in chat says seems to be working well, and also says I have no problems watching the live stream, all good here. So video output low is a lie, just like cake. Spawn an active piece, settle, shift, rotate. The rotation index is something that we assign over here somewhere. Right here? No, it's in the preview piece that we created. Okay, so that's created in the preview, but when do we actually do that? We will turn that into a property as well. Rotation index equals 0, I don't know. And then we'll have not only row, but also the rotation index. And this is basically serving as get rotation index and set rotation index. Yellowman says, it is a lie. Yes. It's a worrisome lie, because it's giving me a red warning thing. But anyway, rotation index is going to be return self dot rotation index. Okay. And rotation index dot setter is going to be rotation index self and then new value. If the new value is different from the old value, we are going to assign the new value, and then we are going to mark the time. spin time equals time.perfCounter. Okay. Very similar to this. This is why getters and setters are less useful than it would sometimes seem. Because oftentimes when you, in programming classes, when you learn about these things, the teachers always say, oh, you need a getter and a setter for everything, and you'll have a bunch of private variables and then public methods to access them because someone could do something with your data. If they use the set method, they're already doing something with your data. So that doesn't really help, and usually they're just return the whatever. Like you'd have a def get row, or, you know, int get row for Java or something, then it would return the row. And then you'd have def set row, or void set row, and then you'd say, you know, row equals the new row. That's all they do. So it really doesn't help most of the time. But sometimes, like when I want to record the time and not have to put in the Tetris class a bunch of like use a change hover time or whatever thing all the time to mark that, this will do it automatically. And all it has to do is access those variables, and we will be keeping track of when they change. Property for the row, and here's the row.setter. Here's the property for the rotation index, and here's the rotation index setter. Hover time, spin time. Okay. For now, we're going to start this up. Yellow Man says, a lie as in sodium hydroxide, LYE. And we are going to run this and see what I broke. If anything. Does not currently appear broken. Tetris is actually a really fun game. Invented in Russia to test one of their computers. Just wanted to, you know, do something with it. See what this machine can do, and that was it. That was all they wanted. And then the developers' colleagues were like, I like this game. This is really good. Because, yeah, it is really good. And, like, you would notice that the screen filled up when you were just, you know, putting pieces down. So he added something to clear the pieces when you created an entire row. And, you know, Tetris. So this still works, etc. Okay, now we will do things. So this is accessing all the properties and recording times of things, I hope, properly. And then we will add something to look at these things. Drawboard. Oh, YouTube says quality is good again. Great. Pause, printboard, check, move. This check and the move and the check and move, these will be, I will be changing these in a future stream because another feature that I want to add is called wall kick, meaning when you have a piece that's too close to the wall to have room to rotate, it should move it just far enough away from the wall to give it room, and then do the rotation. So if you have like an I-beam right up against the wall, it can't rotate, because that would be, you know, out of the thing. So instead of going like this or trying to and failing and just kind of not turning, it would move it away a bit and then turn. That's why it gets kicked away from the wall. So it's this thing that will be changing, and I think instead of just true or false, or, you know, true or none, technically, it'll be it'll have like a what's called a group of error codes in a bit width. Like, it'll, if one of these fails, it'll say the error code is 1, and it'll return a tuple of like basically too low or too far to the side, and maybe we'll split it to either side instead of just range. This means it has collided with something, and then we would check what reason it has to not rotate, and then if everything's okay but it's too far to one side, then we will move it and try again until it works. Something like that, but not today. Move, check and move, rotate. Nope, it's in the tick. So all tick does is shift and then do it again. So we only want to shift if self.piece is active and we're not rotating. That's active, and what are we going to do for this? And the piece is not hovering. I know I'm going to have to check whether the feature is on. Hover. If it's not hovering, not self.hover or, okay, it's going to have to be active. Okay, then it'll check whether this is true. We don't have the hover feature on, so this whole thing is already going to be true because that's an OR, and then we will just say that's fine, we don't have to check this, and then we'll shift. But if we are hovering, then not self.hover will be false because self.hover is true. And then we'll say, oh, this didn't work, well then we'll check this. And if we are not hovering, then either if we don't have the hover feature on, or we are not hovering. Okay. That should work. No, this isn't hover, this is spin. Hover will be in the settle method. Okay. Let's try that again, see what happens. Okay, I didn't turn the feature on, so it's still moving downward. Good. Still moving. Good. And now, spin. I want to turn that on. Now I'm spinning it, and it's not moving. And I stop spinning it, and it moves again. do. Spin, 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 and it doesn't go anywhere. Fantastic. Good. Now the hover. In settle, no, only with this. This is if we shift downwards, because settle is used not very frequently. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. Back in the day, when I was taking an engineering class using AutoCAD, there was a feature called Object Snap, where if two objects are close to being perfectly aligned in some way, it'll snap to it. It's common in various other things. So Object Snap, and it was shortened in the indicator thing at the bottom to Oh Snap. So everyone had lots of fun saying Oh Snap. So if we have snap, then it will not check for hover, because that means you want it to drop it immediately to the bottom, and that's fine. So that can just settle immediately. But if it's shifting downwards, then we want to give it some hover time. Direction and down. So if we're moving down, and there was no room, not success is what that means. And either we have hover off, or and not self.hover, or either we don't have that feature enabled, or the piece can no longer be hovering. Piece.hover. Okay. Let's try that. So the default is that it is on. Let's try turning it off first. No hover. I fail. Did something wrong. And what did I do for rotate? No, it was in tick. And either that feature is off, or we're not doing it. Feature is off, or we're not doing it. What did I do wrong here? Because it settled immediately, so that's bad. If we're moving down, and it couldn't go anywhere, and the feature is off, or let's do this, I don't know. Feature is off, or the piece can no longer hover. Let's check the hover thing. So hover means if right now minus the hover time is short, then it can still hover. Otherwise, no. I don't know if this will help, but we will see. Looks like it helped. It's gonna be kind of hard to test this hover time until it's longer than the actual tick rate. What I can do, since I'm the developer and I'm the boss of this program because I'm writing it, right? It can't tell me what to do, I tell it what to do. So I'm going to say the tick rate is something faster. And here's what we'll do. It'll only be 200. Score, max speed score. Okay, that should do something. Oh, I still have no hover on. I will turn off the no hover, so it will hover. And I think when I get a score of 10 or something, or right now, it will be much faster. So let's pretend that I want this to go not over here, but rather in here, in the one next to it, or, you know, somewhere. I'll move it around. And so it's going really fast. And I think I did get half a second. Let's increase that so I can really tell. Hover. Let's change it to 2. Okay, putting the pieces down on the thing. I just want to clear a row. Now it's faster. Great. 0, 1, 2. Cool. Cool beans. Beans. Beans, beans, beans. There's a movie called Hot Rod in which cool beans figures prominently. 2 characters get into an argument and then they, you know, make up. And then, you know, are we cool? Yeah. Cool beans. Then they're, you know, happy about that. Cool beans. And then they start saying cool beans a whole bunch. It's on the internet, on YouTube, somewhere. I recommend looking it up and possibly watching the whole movie because it's got a lot of funny parts. And you will get a much better experience if you watch all of the funny parts and the whole movie. Oh no, I didn't want it there. Let me move it over. Cool. We're going to change this to not be 2 anymore. And we're going to change the timing back there. So this works. That is all. That's what we do. So we had to change in shift to see whether we would, no, in tick, we want to add some conditions about whether we have to shift or not. And that's, are we doing an easy spin? No. Then just, you know, then shift it. And in shift, if we're moving down and there's nowhere to go, but we can still hover, we could change this to and not this and this. This is called De Morgan's Law. If you have not A or not B is logically equivalent to not A and B. That's De Morgan's law. It's part of discrete math. It's very useful, actually, to know this sort of thing. Because technically it's very slightly faster, because you only have one knot over there, instead of a knot, and an or, you have a single knot and. So infinitesimally faster on a microscopic level, but maybe also clearer in this case. If we're going down and there's nowhere to go and we are not able to hover, which means the feature is on and the piece is hovering. So if that isn't the case, then we settle the piece. And that took a while, 40 minutes, but it's looking good. Looking good. So we changed shift just a little bit. No, we changed tick just a little bit here to add the stuff. And we changed, I'm gonna change this too, and not this and this. There. If the piece is active and it is not spinning, and spinning means we have spin on and the piece is doing a spin. Gonna test that again because reasons. Let's try it without either one. Things still moving downward. Good. I don't suppose I would get, can't really test that part. Unless I change the speed again. And there's currently no sound, and it didn't start with sound, because I have sound, I have computer audio disabled for the stream. Because it would just be the same music over and over again, and we don't need to hear that. I'm going to turn off the little sound effect too. But it is playing for me. I was thinking of adding a command line option to mute the audio, but it is always on every time. We'll just have it like that. That's what we'll do. So this still works fine, as it should. And now we will turn on spin. Spin, 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 spin. It's not going anywhere because I'm still spinning the piece, so can't move it. It's not a thing. Can't do that anymore. Doo-doo-doo. Seems to run fine, as usual. But we made our spin and hover conditions clearer thanks to De Morgan's law. Seriously, look it up. It is very good to know these things. Discrete math is actually a required course in some computer science degree programs. And not all of it is super useful for programming, but some of it is, particularly the actual, discrete logic part, where you're going to be doing a lot of checking of this sort of thing, and, not, or, all that stuff. And it's very important to know what is equivalent and what isn't. Because if you have something that isn't, your program will simply fail. It'll be wrong. And that's something that's I am not actually stalling for time just to keep playing this game. I'm explaining to you the importance of knowing De Morgan's Law, and yeah. So not all of that class was useful for in a programmer, software developer sense, but a lot of it was pretty good to have. Like the statistics part, not particularly amazing. With replacement, without replacement, all that sort of stuff. But definitely the Boolean logic all the time. Would be nice if it also helped with the off by 1 errors, because those are very, very common, as I'm sure you have all seen on this stream. We all love off by 1 errors. So this works. Let's test with only no hover. And it shouldn't allow us to pause it by spinning, and indeed it is moving downwards. Yeah, I turned off the hover, so. Okay. So it is actually, I can test the hover, apparently, by just moving the piece downward manually. And as soon as I do that, it doesn't want to hover. Let's turn, let's have only spin now and see if I can still do that. No. Not sure. 015. That should work. Let's change the hover time again to make sure. Okay, yeah, I can still do that. I don't know how well you can hear my keyboard tapping. Yeah, it does take a long time to settle, doesn't it? 1, 2, I can still move it. And it takes forever to happen. 0, 1, I can still move it. 0, 1, I can still move it. 2, there we go. Awesome. Now let's have spin and no hover. So now we will turn hovering off. 0, 1, and I couldn't move it. Excellent. And now just no hover. And I couldn't move it. Excellent. Change the hover time back to half a second. I was considering having a user customizable spin or hover time, but funnily enough, the primary reason for me not wanting to do that is because it would complicate this part. And then I was like, should I check for more things, whether hover is in any part of one of them, and then have like no hover or hover with a colon and then the value and parse that with a thing, or should I just like import argparse and use it? And I'm like, no, I'm not doing none of that. Yellowman says weeble wobble, and OPOP in chat says, hey, what's up? And Yellowman informs us that if it is wrong, it will fail, and if it fails, it will burn. Sometimes. Just like the Note 7 failed and burned, huh? Sometimes that can occur. That was kind of a hardware reason, though, that happened. They made the battery too large for the space it had, and it was overheating sometimes. So apparently they nailed down the reason and they got it, wasn't a just patch the firmware or something and it's fine. No, that was not the case. So we changed tick and we changed shift at the end, and we added a whole bunch of stuff. We changed this and we added that, and we added this thing, and we added all these properties that weren't there before, but it's all there for a reason. And it's because we want the side effect of noting the time, which is important. That's what we want to do. So we have the row, and whenever we change it, we note the time. We have the rotation index, and whenever we change it, we actually, do squares have a rotation index? I don't think they do. Let's try this with squares. I want a square piece, please. Thank you. It's still moving. So I'll tell you what. All we gotta do is take out this part. Great. If we're changing the rotation index, because that's like a user pressed button, whenever the user does it, I don't care if nothing actually changes in the shape, we're still gonna, you know, take care of that. Don't care about this shape. I mean, I want to see that they work. Indeed they do. It's because we weren't actually testing spinning the square, I believe. Enough. And now we will try to spin this. It's not actually turning. It's just accessing this setter. And it's not moving. Of course, I could accomplish the same practical result by doing this. This pause button that we put in there, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a feature, and maybe someone's more comfortable with doing easy spin when they want to think for another moment rather than pause, because escape is kind of maybe far away from your other buttons with your hands on the keyboard. I don't know. It's there. It's a thing. And next time that we do Tetris, we're going to try wall kick. And wall kick is going to be changing the check function to give a more specific error message rather than it worked or it didn't. It's going to be why didn't it work? And then if it didn't work specifically because it's too close to one of the side walls, it will move the piece toward the center and try again. And Johnny Legs in chat says that he hasn't seen an upload for a while. What's up? I'm not doing them as often as I could, perhaps, but sometimes. I think the last one was a week or two ago, something. We've been, if you've been watching my videos for the past year or so, we've been remodeling our house, and it is sometimes complicated to do things. We're almost done, I think, sort of. We were going to be done last week, but then the floors weren't very good, so we had the floors redone. And like all of them, like we had new floors, including near my bedroom, but I wasn't there. I was in the box fort, if you recall, early this year in like January, February, maybe, something. And actually from last year, because we were ready for the remodel, so I was in the box fort, so they were doing the floors near here, which was okay because I wasn't in here. But when we want to redo all the floors now, it means floors in front of all the rooms and stuff. So we couldn't really move around very easily. It was a little bit challenging. I got out through the window of my room because right outside was, you know, fresh floor being redone with the stain and the varnish and all. And couldn't really step on it and didn't want junk getting on the floors and sticking to it under the coats with varnish. And so I just took the screen out of the window and climbed out the window to go to, you know, the store, or my classes, or whatever. We put a ladder right outside, so I would go out the window and go down the ladder. But yeah, hopefully more often-ish. I actually have a few things planned. One, as I've been saying, this the wall kick for Tetris, and also we have to finish slicing for the deck. That's not done. That doesn't work yet. I think access works, but slice assignment is still wrong. So we will have to do that. Johnny says, good luck with the house and thanks for the Python vids. They're really cool. Yes, indeed. Wall kick, deck slicing, and there's new cities for Mini Metro, so maybe I'll do that. Something different from coding, I don't know. But I think that is all for today. And it works, and it's good, and it's more playable. Remember, spin defaults to off, so if you want to be able to turn on easy spin, you have to add spin to the command line. And hover defaults to on, so if you don't want it to do that, you'll have to add no hover to the command line. And that is all for today. Thanks so much for everyone for joining me and watching and participating in the stream. Makes it more exciting. And I will see you next time, which is hopefully soon-ish, few days maybe, I don't know. And oh, code is on GitHub, linked in the description. Previous segments of these videos are on my channel, archived. And thanks again, and have a good one.